So we'll start with Breakout Room 4, where we were discussing research. Shiamo Thapa. Let's welcome her with a round of applause. Remember, I showed you what to do? 1, 2, then 1, 2, then 1, 2. So let's try it again. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Thank you.
Dumelang, everybody. Dumelang Jumbo. Good. My name is Shiamo Thapa. I am a managing director for a company called Collective Value Creation Botswana. I'm from Botswana, and I'm so happy and so excited to be here with you all. We didn't get a vote as break room session 4 about me being the first one here, so I've got a complaint there. I'm just going to quickly just share as brief as I can possibly be on our session, how it went. So our session was research and data on corruption and business ethics. I hope I'm audible. Everybody can hear me? Good. I have a very soft and slow voice, so I usually have to check. So the session was moderated by Lim Hazel Masika, who's from the Center of International Enterprise, and she introduced the topic, emphasizing the importance, of course, of research in promoting business ethics and reducing corruption. So we had a presentation from Mr. Ben Kiragu, who is the country director of SIPE in Kenya. And he presented a very eye-opening corruption risk mapping tool. This research tool assesses the state of corruption in Kenya, particularly in the private sector. Its objective is to identify areas where businesses are most vulnerable to corruption and to understand the broader impact of corruption on business operations. One second. So, looking at the corruption risk mapping, from what Ben shared, the research conducted periodically identifies high-risk sectors in Kenya, such as procurement, sales and marketing, and finance. It also maps corruption risks in various industries, including trade, retail, manufacturing, and services. So small and business-sized enterprises are particularly vulnerable, with these businesses facing the highest levels of corruption, including bribery and fraud. So what did the research find? Corruption trends, for one. Transparency International's data showed a worsening of Kenya's corruption ranking, with a score of 126 out of 180 in 2022. And not to brag, but I guess I should, Botswana scores number 5, so encouraging you all to push a little bit harder. So the second finding is on private sector's perspective. So businesses in the private sector largely view the public sector as the primary source of corruption, especially in procurement, bribery, and tax evasion. Vulnerable areas is the third finding. SMEs, particularly in wholesale and retail, experience the highest levels of corruption, such as bribery and fraud. And the fourth one being employee impact. Corruption tends to be more prevalent in businesses with fewer employees. Approximately 56% of SMEs reported higher exposure to corruption. So what are the barriers that are being faced in combating corruption? Quickly, legislation, enforcement, and the cost of legal fees, meaning that the high cost of legal services discourage businesses from taking action against corruption. I can relate with this one as well, coming from Botswana. Lawyer fees are quite high. Key insights and recommendations. Collaboration, which we had a huge discussion around this. Greater collaboration is needed between the private and public sectors to tackle corruption effectively. and businesses should be proactive in identifying vulnerable areas and mitigating corruption risks. The second recommendation is business associations must be able to take a stronger stand against corruption. There should be a collective push for more awareness of anti-corruption laws among business owners. And the third one is proactive action, which I think is quite critical, and I think this is why we're gathered here as well today. Businesses should actively engage in anti-corruption efforts by identifying their vulnerabilities and taking steps to improve compliance and reporting mechanisms. I'm just gonna, in the interest of time, I'm just gonna share the key takeaways from our session. SMEs are, the first takeaway, SMEs are most vulnerable to corruption, particularly in sectors that I had mentioned earlier. There's a lack of awareness of corruption laws among businesses as a significant barrier to reducing corruption. Technology has proven effective in reducing human interaction and consequently corruption in certain sectors. So in the group I did share about how Botswana, we moved from manual application for businesses to online. So instead of taking 5 months, we now take 24 hours. So that cut out a whole lot of muck, and you don't have to pay anybody to get your company certificate. The fourth takeaway is public-private collaboration is critical in tackling corruption with both sectors. Businesses must take responsibility, being the fifth takeaway. And I must mention also, I think it's worth mentioning, we had a very good example of somebody who reported a corruption incident, and they got very good response from the governing body. So as Fatma said in the morning, if I remember well, it's not all doom and gloom. And I shared that I'm wearing this flowery dress to say there is hope. We shouldn't give up. Thank you so much.
As we prepare to appreciate her, David Murigu. Faisal, where is David? David is there. Okay, good. Let's appreciate Thiamo.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to adopt the existing protocol. David Murigu. Allow me to greet you all. Good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure and a lot of joy to see that we, the young people, are now part of this conversation. I know there can be much to say, but I believe the smile on my face says it all. Allow me to give you a brief explanation or resolutions that we, the young people, came up with from breakout room number 3. So our topic was the role of the youth in creating an enabling ethical business environment, empowering the youth to be catalyst of an ethical business environment. So our moderator was Imabong, I believe. I hope I got that right. Okay, thank you. And so our speakers were Thomas Nudi, who's the founder of Nudi Empire Foundation. We also had Kelvin Getobai, who is a farmer just as myself. He's a farm manager at Ololo Farm. Faisal Abdi, the young brilliant man over there, who is the president of Ethics Ambassadors Network Kenya. Allow me just to read out quickly the resolutions. A detailed report, I'm going to submit it to Rachel, that in case you're interested in going through it, it's going to be provided. So number 1 is capacity building within our startups, especially within the youth. Yeah, there's need for capacity building for the startups that belong to the young people. Number 2, which I believe is an example of why we are here today, there's a need for meaningful youth engagement in private and public sector. And I believe we do have a lot of private sector represented here, which is good. Number 3, instilling ethical values in young learners before they are exposed in the industries / the job market, which is a prime example of what Ethics Ambassadors Network does. Number 4, firm or ethical leadership within business organizations to uphold values and visions as well as give direction. Number 5, there is need for mentorship to startups, especially those run by young people, to avoid a repetition of the previous ethical mistakes that have been done before. Number 6, there is need for the young people to take up the tasks in being more innovative and creative in any startups to mask and evade any unethical behavior. Number 7, there is need for building an organization culture and structure which will enhance trust to partners, investors, and therefore enabling sustainability. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, no man is an island. Therefore, there is need for partnership and collaboration for the startups that are begun by young people. Thank you and have a lovely evening.
Thank you. We are together. Our theme for the conference is A Brave New Africa, Business Growth in Time of Economic Turbulence. And the truth of the matter is, looking across the room, we are not exactly in our sunset years, but we are handing over to the young generation. So we are grateful for them being part of the process and participating and actively engaging as we look forward to you being role models for your generation and the generation that is coming after you. So let's appreciate him and all the youth. Let's go. 1, 2, 1, 2. Thank you very much. Coming up on stage for Breakout Room 2 is Lorraine Kidinji, UN Global Compact Kenya. David has set standards. We keep it brief. Let's appreciate her. Okay, let's go. 2 sharp claps. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Thank you.
So, Lorraine, I'm presenting from the discussion from Breakout Room 2. We were discussing business ethics in the age of tech, automation, and AI. And I have to confess, my report is done because of AI. So we should embrace it. So we explored the intersection of technology and business ethics, focusing on artificial intelligence and data usage in business operations. Our moderator was Calvin Kenyanjui from the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We had 2 speakers. One was Steve Nyakoli from Ingressive Venture Capital.
Now, I've been told I'm adding 2 more people on stage, so I need 2 more of those white seats.
You need to shout. And then I have Patrick Kenoti from Safaricom. So the moderator led the discussion and examined the ethical implications of emerging technologies, their potential risks, and the frameworks needed to ensure responsible use. Discussions highlighted the role of venture capital in promoting ethical startups, corporate governance, and safeguarding consumer rights. So the first discussion was with the head of ethics and compliance in Safaricom, and we were asked about the committee person who sends us message. So this was very timely. So they said that indeed they do collect data when you use their platforms as a person who calls or as a person who uses the M-Pesa. But then they've set up internal regulations to ensure that this data is not misused. So they do have an AI council that governs how they use this data that they collect from us. Then he explained that their internal safeguards were, on data protection was established in 2016, which is they've done this for long. And then they noted that in Kenya there are lacking or limited external regulations on the use of AI. So there is a Data Protection Act, but the use of AI is not yet regulated, and this is more because of it's new and it's growing and revolutionizing very fast, making it difficult even for the regulators to keep up. But they recommended use and regulations on it. Then the second speaker, who was Steve Nyakuli, was presenting on promoting ethical business practices among startups, because in their venture capital business, they engage startups. So they also echoed the lack of regulations and how startups are using AI, especially in developing their pitch information fraudulently. So they are faced with the risk of investing in businesses that have been developed through ChatGPT, and then they die, and that means a risk for their investment. So what they are doing to mitigate this is conducting very effective due diligence, and they give preference to companies that are ethical. So when we interact with businesses who ask, how do you get money, how do you get finances? It is through being ethical, right? So now the key highlight from this discussion is the ethical concerns around AI usage in businesses and the discrimination that comes around this. There was a case given of the use of biometrics. When they were developed, they could not recognize the dark skin. Imagine, you're trying to get into your office, but the biometrics are not recognizing, because most of these technological advancements are brought to us. So how can we customize it for the African market and including our cultures and values, right? Then there was the role of internal governance. Even though there are no regulations, as a business, we are called upon to do regulations internally. And there was the call to benchmark from bigger businesses who have got it right. So for example, Safaricom has been engaging their supply chain to also embark on this ethical journey. And then the venture capitals have been called upon to encourage startups to adapt ethical practices and governance structures, which is why it is very key in their due diligence. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Just one last thing that I wrote. And I said I would quote. Steve Nyakuli said, ethics is not a roadblock. It is the foundation for long-term success. So I am calling upon businesses to view it differently. Thank you.
1, 2. Thank you very much. You know when you know your colleagues and friends. I knew if I give her a blank check, she will give us more stories. Thank you very much, Lorraine. I appreciate you. Coming up on stage to report on behalf of Room 1 is Joanne Muturi from Bespoke Human Capital. Joanne, my sister, you see standards have been set, eh? Yeah. So we maintain them. Let's appreciate her. 1, 2. Thank you.
All right. Representing Breakout 1, Session 1, my name is Joanne Muturi. I'm a human resource practitioner. We had a very good conversation discussing compliance, anti-corruption, ethics, and due diligence in Africa, across Africa. So our speakers were Mr. Mohammed Alidini, who works with Takaful. He's the Sharia compliance manager at Takaful Insurance. We also had Mr. George Kiruthu, who is a VP of compliance at Absa Bank, Kenya. So the gentleman led the conversations, but the congregation or the audience was equally very engaged. So panelist 1, Mr. Mohammed, took us through the Sharia compliance. Most of us didn't know what Sharia laws entail. There are a lot of misconceptions or lack of information out there. For instance, I didn't know I can take a Sharia compliant product. He also took us through what they do at Takaful Insurance and how different it is from conventional insurance. So I'll quickly go through his pointers before I go to the questions that were posed. Mr. Mohammed informed us that operations at Takaful are based on Sharia compliance principle. The model they operate on is that the participant, what we call the insured in conventional insurance, runs on 2 quotas. So we have a main account where the risk aspect is covered. So that is where your premiums, if you have a claim, goes to. Then there's another account where they pool funds, and those funds go to administration expenses. They keep the admin going. So if a participant, what we call the insured, in what we know the traditional insurance, has a claim, the money comes from the fund where the risk is managed. Then the norm has been in the industry, in the insurance industry, or what he has observed, is whenever they approach clients for business, they are asked for 10%. The business is 30 million, give us 3 million upfront. So it takes courage, it takes principle, it takes very high ethical standards to reject any form of corruption. To an extent, they have had to, lose business to competitors because they're not willing to participate in the corruption. So that we commend, and for everyone in the room, it's something we should emulate. He also informed us that whenever there is, at the end of the year, whenever there is surplus, in the traditional insurance setup, we have insurance profit, or the profit after tax. What we have under Takaful is a surplus, and what happens at the end of the year is that surplus is redistributed to participants on condition that you did not have a claim. So you can see there is no room for even temptation to use that profit. It goes back to the rightful owners. Then a few questions were posed, and the key question was what challenges the insurance companies face. I think I've mentioned one main challenge being corruption and the cost of corruption. He informed us that regulations currently in place are not solving real problems in the insurance sector. And then we have parallel regulations in Africa. So you find country X has a set of regulations, country Y. So if we can harmonize that under one set of rules, that would help in easing the cost of doing business and the turnaround time. Then you'll agree with me that the uptake of insurance in Africa is very low. And there are a lot of myths surrounding insurance and the insurance business. He made us laugh because whenever they go to approach clients who have not been insured before, the first thing they're met with is people believe that insurance companies just take your money, but when you need them, when you have a claim, they run away. So that has been a hindrance for them, and I think there needs to be a lot of communication to the populace. Then panelist 2 was Mr. Kiruthu, as I mentioned, from ABSA Kenya. His opening remarks were that there is a major problem in the banking industry, and it stems from either lack of or poor governance. So we've seen stories in the media about manager X from Bank Y who disappeared with funds, customer funds. We've seen systems being hacked and people losing money. So this is an area where the banking industry is suffering, and but he mentioned there is hope because they are working on strengthening the systems. So he also informed us that they have leveraged on IT to overcome some of these challenges. For example, use of data and analytics in curbing unethical conduct. When you go to open an account, they do KYC on you. If you're maybe a warden, a KWS warden, they look at your risk profile. They see an unusual amount of money being transacted through your account. It raises red flags, and they are able to take that up. The other challenge he mentioned was human trafficking. There are a lot of people who register as agencies to take people abroad, but we all know not all of them are straightforward. Then resolutions. Resolution number 1 from the discussions was we need to strengthen governance and transparency in our organizations, and that cuts across all industries. Then enhance compliance, especially in the insurance sector, modernize regulatory frameworks, leverage technology for compliance and risk management, build public trust in insurance, educate people that insurance is there to help you in your time of need. And then lastly, promote ethical behavior and accountability. We discuss at length the issue of culture in our organizations and whether we as leaders indirectly are abetting corruption. We have very high targets for our team, so sometimes they use unscrupulous means to achieve the targets. Let's review our reward and recognition mechanism so that we bring everybody on board. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Joanne. That was detailed. You know, in that room, the Q&A kept on going on, and now, you know, for the finance people in the room, they were being taken to task. Is our money safe? Does someone play with our accounts at night while we were sleeping? So let's appreciate her. 1, 2. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a beautiful day, a wonderful day, full of learnings. We now come to the last session of the day, private sector collective action. And to take us through this is our very own Rachel Mudhoga, an advocate of the High Court with over 15 years of experience. She holds a law degree from the University of Nairobi and a master's in international legal studies, focusing on human rights from Georgetown University. And she received an award, LAWA. She will explain to us what LAWA means. She's the founder of On Point Policy Advisors, a consulting firm specializing in governance, policy, trade facilitation, and capacity building. She provides services to international agencies, business associations, and local and global businesses. She was recognized in 2015, top 40 under 40 women by the Business Daily, and also won a trophy from the International Olympics Committee in 2018 for her advocacy work on women's rights and empowerment through sports. She's going to take us through the last panel. She's an advocate of ethics and governance and doing things straight and by the book. And if you deal with her, you will understand. Allow me to call, let's appreciate her as she comes on stage.
Thank you so much. We've talked about a lot of things, isn't it? We broke out, we had intense conversations in our breakouts, and now we want to talk about private sector collective action. And why that's important is that we must have to-dos when we leave this room, isn't it? That we want practical things that we're going to learn about that other businesses are doing, but more so what we can do in our individual businesses going back. And for that discussion, I have Mr. Francesco Cecchi. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right. He's the team lead for Africa and the Anti-Corruption Hub. Yes, please come teach us again at UNODC. He spoke to us earlier. I have Stephen, yes, thank you. I have Stephen Kimenya, who is the programs manager at the Global Compact, the Kenya office. I also have with me Tony Ngige, who is the CEO of Stealth Africa, and all the way from, okay, am I going too fast? We need to recognize them. And all the way from Uganda, we have Shafi Manafa from the Federation of Uganda Employers. Please join me on stage. Now we can recognize them.
Let's appreciate them at our stage. Thank you, Lord.
Asante sana. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me this afternoon as we start to look at collective action by the private sector. And allow me to put Francesco on the spot first. Because talk to us, we've talked about, in almost every room, there was talk about law, policy, frameworks. What policies and laws, or what would be your comment about the legal and policy framework? Because I know that you have a bird's eye view in the work that you do at UNODC. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. It's a pleasure to participate in this panel. I will not talk about collective action, but as I said, I will talk a little bit about the legal framework that underpins collective action, the reason why you do it. So first of all, about the international legal framework, the challenge that we face, at UNODC, we are supposed to help countries in a way standardize the legal framework for anti-corruption in line with the UN Convention Against Corruption. So there are few measures in the convention that are applicable to business that we should talk a little bit about. And one of very much importance is foreign bribery. So the bribery of foreign public officials. And why does this create a problem in international business? Because you probably know that most of the company that comes from OECD countries are bound to respect foreign bribery laws by the OECD Bribery Convention, because their countries have ratified the OECD Bribery Convention, and therefore they have to respect these standards. Also, they have ratified the UN Convention Against Corruption that includes foreign bribery. But the UN Convention Against this aspect of the UN Convention Against Corruption is not very much implemented in the countries of the region. So there is a sort of the framework is not very fair, because if you have a company that comes from the United States, from the UK, from France, they are bound by these quite strict laws on foreign bribery. And why it's important for compliance? Well, because these strict laws, for example, the Foreign Corrupt Practice Act, of the US, really can impose, the DOJ that implements the regulations can impose very high fees and very high punishment for the companies that invest, let's say, in Kenya, and they are involved in bribery issues, right? Now, not only the companies that invest in Kenya, but also companies that have subsidiaries or that have consultants promoting their businesses in Kenya. They are bound to respect the Foreign Corrupt Practice Act. No? So for them, it's complicated, because you as subsidiaries or service provider could engage the liability, the responsibility of these companies in their own country. An important act has been, from this perspective, if we look at national legislation, an important act has been the UK Bribery Act. So the UK Bribery Act has introduced the sort of criminal fact of failure to prevent bribery. So the company that fails to prevent bribery, if there is a bribery, if you have failed to establish mechanism for prevention within your company that would be in line with the required standards, then you can be punished as a company. On the other hand, the Act also introduces let's say the defense if you can demonstrate that you have established the compliance and the prevention of corruption systems required by the law. Why is this important? Because basically this is the law that has been copied. I don't want to say copied, but if you look at the Kenya Bribery Act, it looks very much like the UK Bribery Act. And so what's in this Kenya Bribery Act, the UK Bribery Act, which is also now the South Africa Bribery Act since, I think, April this year. So as I say, there is the failure to prevent as a criminal offense. There are the reporting obligations, so obligations to report corruption. So let's be clear, if the company knows about corruption and you don't report to the authority, this is obstruction of justice, punishable by law. Of course, the penalties, so not only penalties for those that work for the company, so for the individuals, CEOs and so on, but also for the company itself. That include also confiscation, of course, of the proceeds of what you have gained through a corrupt transaction, and also debarment, disqualification from working with the government, from public contracts, and so on. So the penalties can be very, very damaging for a company, not to talk about the reputational risks for the company. So just to close the act, the UK Bribery Act also required the government to put forward a standard that the companies should implement for to be in compliance with the law. And these standards also have been replicated a little bit elsewhere, including in Kenya. So we're talking about, of course, prevention of risks and risk mapping. So we have talked about risk mapping in the previous session. So a little bit more specifically, when you look at risk mapping, you have to look at bribery, embezzlement, fraud, conflicts of interest, all these typologies of crime, and see how they can be a risk for your business model in your supply chain. And you do a mapping and you see likelihood and impact of those risks, and then you develop a strategy to address them. And that's a requirement by law to be specific. It's not something you may or may not do. Of course, due diligence, top-level commitment, so showing the top management has to show commitment to respect these rules. Communication, so the company has to provide communication material for its employee, but not only employee, consultants, subsidiaries, again, people that work in any shape or forms for the company. And monitoring and review regularly of this whole system. So that's a little bit the framework that is becoming standard, so to speak, not only in Kenya, but as I said, in South Africa, as well as in other countries of the region. So I'll stop here, and then perhaps there'll be questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, because I think from your explanation we can hear the, I would say, heavy burden there is for companies to comply. And as we look into the work that the UN Global Compact does, how are you supporting companies, and what processes, Stephen, are you putting in? It would be great to hear about the framework and how the work that you do works. I know that Stephen has some slides, so you'll cue us when you're ready, and they'll be played.
Okay, great. So the idea behind this is just to unpack collective action for the private sector, such that we have actionable strategies. So UN Global Compact has come up with a framework around the development and even just a setup of collective action initiatives. So if any of you have visited the desk that we have outside, we have this Bible. We call it our Bible. Yeah, so it's Uniting Against Corruption, a playbook on anti-corruption collective action. And it's really just a framework on how we set up collective actions, because there are different types of collective actions and they serve different types of purposes. So we have a framework where we can develop them, and we'll take you through that at a very high level right now, because I feel like I'm in class and this is not class time at 4 p.m. So let's go. Next slide, please. Okay, so I've just spoken about the book, and I want to stress some words here. Maybe I should stand up. That might be better. In definition of collective action, the keywords: collaborative, sustained process, right? Collaborative, sustained process. So it's ongoing, and there's a lot of things that we have to be doing with a lot of stakeholders. And its objective is to increase the credibility of one single actor, all right? We'll go to the next slide, please. This is not to replace regulation, all right? We've just heard about the anti-bribery regulation of UK and how it's influenced Africa, South Africa, and other places beyond. So this is not to influence, not to replace, but to support, complement where it's not present. So case in point, Kenya. 10 years ago, no conversation ongoing on Anti-Bribery Act. So we come together as private sector and begin to drive that conversation. And it was spoken to at the beginning, Global Compact, KEPSA, CAM, and all these private sector actors coming together to lobby and create an agenda, right? To be able to create this agenda and credibility behind it, we needed a collective action. And that's what drove this, the coming to where we are today with the current act. So there are different types of anti-corruption collective action initiatives, all right? There's a declaration that you can make. Next slide, please, so I can run through them quickly and we can get into discussions. So there's a declaration that you can make, and if I just move here to the slide, it depends on what your objective is or the level of commitment. So it could be long-term or short-term, and it could be ethical, or it could be an external agreement, meaning it's binding, right? So an anti-corruption declaration is short-term ethical commitment voluntarily, right? I'll speak to a long-term of the same. Still voluntary. The example here that comes to mind is the Global Compacts, CAM and KEPSA's Code of Ethics for Businesses in Kenya, right? So that's a voluntary agreement. You're not bound by anybody to sign it, right? You must sign it willfully. If you don't want to sign it, and we know the way it operates, that sometimes you have to sign it because if you don't sign it, you're not going to get a contract with your client. But you have to choose. If I want to do business with you, then I have to abide by this code, right? And it's a long term to ensure that within your organization you have created standards, and just like was being mentioned before, that you are taking deliberate methods to prevent bribery and corruption, right? So that's a principle-based initiative. You can have other types of initiatives like certifying business coalitions. I believe we have a Blue Company in the house. Yeah. We have other types of, sorry, previous slide. Other types which are integrity pacts, which are really just to create oversight onto private-public partnerships, right? So we jump forward. It's a lot of jargon, but it'll make sense shortly. So this is the Code of Ethics, the Code of Ethics for Businesses in Kenya, launched in 2012. Currently, we have about 1,000 plus signatories to this who are committed and have made public declarations to create processes in their companies that deliberately disable corruption, right? In the first year, because we understand the different levels of companies and where you are in policy and what resources are required to put this in place, there is no obligation to report. But next slide, in the second year, we are beginning to place regulations on you to report what you're doing on an annual basis towards this code. Again, even though it is voluntary, we believe that it is upheld by honor. It's an honor code, right? So if we go online and find that you're in some sort of scandal, then we pull you out from that particular signatory until you come forth and clear yourself and clear whatever scandal there is around you. We're thinking about it. There's a term we've been using. We're calling it the good guys club. You know, there's the cartels. You know, there's a good guys club. So this is a good guys club. You sign on to the good guys club. If we find you blacklisted somewhere, we put you out until you clean up and then come back and we can do business again. So there's a 6-step approach that we use, and I will really rush through it because this in itself is like a 3-day workshop. All right. So I'll really rush through it. Yeah. So the idea is to first, as was mentioned, identify where your risks lie. So conduct some risk assessment workshop within the stakeholders that are coming in. So it's not just this is not an activity for your organization, inside your organization. It is within a group of diverse stakeholders. So private sector organizations, small companies, large companies, public organizations, government, and the like. So we sit around the table and we identify what our risks and opportunities are as far as corruption is concerned. And an example that comes to mind is a project that we are doing with USAID on and reducing corruption, fraud, waste, and abuse in the healthcare sector. So as we go to these different counties, which is the mandate of the program. We collect stakeholders, put them in a room, and they conduct a risk assessment of their processes and the interactions between private and public sector and where they are most vulnerable. So once we've created those, identified those, they also guide who we're going to place in the room, and then we start to develop what action are we going to take around this. So collective action means we have to have a goal. We have to be specific. We're not just meeting to discuss and lament about something, but there is an agenda that we're trying to push forward. And there must be frameworks to define that, to make sure that it can achieve on these particular goals of scale and sustenance. So depending on the goal that you choose, we want whatever action that we are trying to address to reach its intended purpose and to be scaled up if necessary. Within those, previous slide, yeah. So within these collective actions, you have different roles. You have the people who convene and say, come and let's talk about this thing, the facilitators. You have the people who are going to come down and they have smaller actions, maybe SMEs. You have anchors, the large organizations that have resources. What is your specific role? I give an example of, again, maybe say Safaricom, or who are an anchor. They sign our code and they bind their suppliers to sign the code. That ripple effect. As the suppliers grow, they also bind the other people, and it grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. So once again, I said that's a whole 3-day workshop, but just to show what it can achieve. Next slide. Next slide again. So here in Kenya, we've had tons of success, about 1,000 signatories to the code. We've been able to influence policy. We engage at CEO level, just so we can drive change from the top as well. This is also working very well in Latin America, where they're building collective actions that are now very industry specific, and the example there is around agribusiness, and it's a path that we're also going to take as Global Compact Kenya in the next year. Yeah, in India as well, looking at another sector specific approach to collective action, and now just in healthcare and what they're able to achieve there. As far as advocacy and creating best practices on anti-corruption healthcare. Yeah, so that's in general what I wanted to show, that there is a framework, and those who are members of and not of Global Compact are welcome to join our collective actions. So this code of ethics that we have is not something that is unique to Global Compact participating companies. It is open to all companies. And it's just a declaration that you sign, and we believe just by signing that, we're already moving the needle. All right? All right, that's my presentation.
Thank you so much. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, Stephen, because I believe that you've given us an opportunity for businesses that are in the room to ponder, isn't it? How many are Global Compact members already? How many of his 1,600 are here? Quite a few, that's good. But for all of those of us who didn't put up our hands, we know where to go, isn't it? Thank you so much. And Tony, you've put up your hand as we were counting the members, right? And I do know that you have experience specifically in the SME sector. It's one thing to give examples of Safaricom, Kenya Airways, with all due respect. But we do know that small and medium enterprises are bearing the brunt of the burden of corruption. So maybe just to unpack for us some of the challenges and barriers that exist for them.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for that. So maybe the first starting point is for us to remind ourselves that 98% of businesses in Kenya are SMEs, and I think that reflects across the continent. And these are the engines that drive our economy. The engine is in the SME sector. And I know Safaricom, KQ, ABSA in the room have a lot of programs that they run and a lot of structures. But if you look, picking from Ben's presentation earlier, I attended the session just to listen to some of the statistics, is that the most impacted sector is the SME sector by 56% compared to the large organizations. I think he said 12%. So it's 5 times impact. If you unpack that, think about a person driving a Safaricom branded vehicle at night, going home, and a police officer stops the person, asks, where are you going, who are you? And they say, I work for Safaricom. What happens? they are let to go. But what if it's a small business person carrying their wares going home at night? It's a different conversation. So that's how the impact is if you are to unpack it. And Francesco has talked about cross-territorial applications of some of the global companies coming here and the legal impact. But there's more to it at the SME sector level. If you, for example, look at picking the example of the Adani scandal, they've been indicted by the Department of Justice in the USA. Okay, there's legal impact for them, but for the SMEs that were working with them, there are a lot of Kenyan businesses. Some of them were championing for them. They were hired to do PR. Where is their reputation? It takes years to build your reputation, and one day for it to go down the drain. So that's another way you can look at it from an impact perspective at the SME level. So SMEs need to invest more on integrity, and like someone said, it's the foundation in which to build a long-lasting and sustainable business. SMEs are impacted in many ways. One of the easiest ones is lost opportunities, lost tenders due to bribing. You have to bribe, they're telling you don't meet the requirements, isn't it? Sometimes you're denied and you're stopped at the door. According to the statistics, 63% pay bribes just to win businesses, for example. So again, that's a very key place. Another key challenge we've seen is the lack of expertise, lack of structures, lack of know-how. We've been told that, for instance, the government has certain demographics that have been set, including youth and SMEs, to get business. How do you bid? How do you bid for? How do you access that? You go to the ministry or somewhere, someone asks you for money. So the lack of know-how is one of the things that also impacts SMEs quite a lot. SMEs also sometimes, because they work alone, they lack a voice, and also there's a fear of retaliation. Someone said that they went to a government, to some launch, and then they spoke up about something wrong, and they were not listened to. And I remember the person presenting said, because you are alone, which is true. So that is the idea about collective action. When we launched the Code of Ethics for Businesses in Kenya, about 8-10 years ago also, I remember SAIP was there, KEPSA, CAN, Kenya's Vision of Manufacturers, UN Global Compact, they all came together, launched it, and some businesses signed up, and the idea about the Code of Ethics for Business in Kenya, because we relaunched it a few months ago, led by UN Global Compact and KEPSA. The idea was that the big boys, if I may use that term, big boys or big girls, were to cascade and create integrity islands that then join up together. So think about it like Safaricom. Safaricom signed the Code of Ethics for Businesses in Kenya. They have suppliers, maybe more than 1,000 contracts under them that are big, fairly maybe medium size. Under them, they have suppliers supplying their suppliers. So requiring them to take it to the second and third level. It creates this good boys club, which Stephen has alluded to, where you create ecosystems which SMEs can plug in, get business fairly, and grow their business. And now, imagine if you could join those. So for instance, Safaricom, the island of Safaricom together with KQ and ABSA, I'm using those because they're the ones who presented today and they're the main sponsors. If they joined up, so you will have a multiplier effect. So that is the whole idea. And when we relaunched the Code of Ethics for Businesses in Kenya, a lot of organizations came forward. I know there is a plan around it. We need to actualize it. How do you move it forward beyond there? Make it really practical. If a small business person goes to Safaricom and says, I have signed the Code of Ethics for Businesses in Kenya, I have these controls, some of which have been mentioned by Francesco here, risk assessments, communication, structures, and all that. Do they get the opportunity? All right, so rewarding ethical behavior or indications of ethical behavior then becomes a catalyst for more people to engage and grow their businesses. Maybe I can stop there.
Thank you so much, Tony. But I think it's given us a clear picture about the situation for SMEs, isn't it? And we know that there are many small and medium enterprises represented in this room. So I believe that we can see the path forward. And Shafi, allow me to come to you, and you represent the Federation of Uganda Employers. And largely the business environment in Uganda and Kenya and across Africa, businesses are facing the same challenges. And businesses that want to start this journey might be looking into the fog and wondering, where do I start? What would be your key steps, and what's the experience in terms of keys to success in this journey?
Thank you so much, Rachel. There is a lot to say, but I'll just kind of summarize it from what the previous speakers have alluded to. There are just about 5 things that you can actually do as an SME, as a company, as a business that wants to get started along this journey. Because you have an option of either doing it the easy way or the hard way. Whether you like it or not, whether we like it or not, we are the continent of the future, and that future is now as Africans. We have the UK Anti-Bribery Act. We have the UN guiding principles that demand of you to do good, but also those in your supply and demand chains. We have other standards like the EU due diligence. We have the CSRD. We have the CS3D. All these things are basically targeting companies in Africa to do good business. We talk about ESG, we talk about responsible business, but at the end of the day, when you do responsible business, when you do principled business, it is actually you who benefits. So, number one, very, very simply, in the interest of time, the first thing is you need to think about leadership commitment or policy commitment. That is the first thing, because when there is commitment at the top, then it means that this message is going to cascade down, and it's going to be very good for you. Number two, you need to do your risk and impact assessment. If you are in a certain sector, in a certain geographical location, if you know there are some risks, there are some areas that are prone to you, you need to do your risk and impact assessment so that you're able to diagnose and identify the risk areas and your challenges and how this would impact you. Number three, you need to think about implementing effective actions. And here, there are very, very simple things that you can do. For example, just sort out your governance as a company, as a small company. What is the role of the board? How do they support you? What is the role of the like the secretariat or the business, the various departments, the various units? How do they plug in? How do they support you along this journey? Basically, you can also start with very, very simple things like having a code of conduct, even if it's only 2 pages. Things like saying whenever we have a meeting, whether at the operational level or at the board level, we start on the agenda as a standard item, we must have a declaration of conflict of interest. These are small things that you can do, but they have great impact. You need to have things like having like a whistleblower policy in your HR manual. These are simple things, but at the end of the day, they'll give you a lot of mileage. And then there are things like building a culture around ethics. The people, the business strategists and HR tell us that strategy feeds on culture as breakfast. So even if you have these very beautiful strategies, you need to take it one day at a time. You need to build a culture of ethics in the organization. You can't achieve it overnight. You need to keep doing small things to build a culture of ethics in your small company. Of course, you'll find that there are capacity needs here, so you need to have systems of training your people, mentoring them, even if it is a 2 or 3 people training or a coaching session of maybe 10 minutes a day or 30 minutes a week, it is good enough. You'll get there. That is number 3. Number 4, tracking progress and monitoring. Even if you're a small company somewhere, you have 5 staff, you have 20 staff, just integrate in your operations a system of how you're monitoring this, of how you're implementing this. And then number 5, and lastly, communication and reporting. Those are 5 very simple steps that you can start with. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's give him a round of applause. And I think he's given us very practical things, isn't it? Some of them might be bigger. You might say, I don't have a 20-page manual, but at least I can have a 2-page code of ethics that everyone, even if it's a driver, an accountant, and maybe I'm running a restaurant, I have 2 cooks, they have to sign, isn't it? And that's something that's doable, that's achievable, that we can do. Thank you, gentlemen, because I believe that you've given us a pathway that each and every business that's sitting here can look and say, okay, do I want to join Global Compact? Can I look at these 5 steps that Shafi has given me? You've given us practical solutions for the challenge ahead. Thank you so much. And I'm so happy that we've had this session. Let's give them a round of applause as we step out. Back to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great day. Stretch where you are as I find out if David is ready to give us. Please come as I stretch.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening. Okay, so I'm here just to give a brief, in statement points, the resolutions of the day. I'm just going to be very brief. It is also good to note that a detailed report of whatever I'm going to read is going to be provided later on, so if at all you'd want a detailed report, just reach out to ABEC. So these are the resolutions of the day from the Africa Business Ethics Conference 2024. Number 1, there's need to unite and take initiative for sustainable change. Number 2, there's need to align the fight against corruption with business needs. Reframe anti-corruption efforts to directly support business objectives, removing financial and labor barriers to foster growth and sustainability. Number 3, there is need to engage the youth in the fight against corruption. Number 4, standardize anti-corruption laws across Africa. We might all agree, and we must all agree, that there is need to harmonize anti-corruption laws across African nations, creating unified policies to strengthen the content's collective fight against corruption. Number 5, enhance collaboration between public and private sectors. There's need to promote stronger cooperation between government bodies and private enterprises to create effective, sustainable solutions for tackling corruption. Number 6, AI competency and emphasizing regulatory frameworks. That is to promote AI governance and due diligence across businesses, emphasizing the importance of regulatory frameworks and internal governance structures. Number 7, reward and recognize businesses upholding ethical practices. There is need to establish systems to acknowledge and reward businesses that consistently demonstrate ethical behavior, promoting integrity as a standard and encouraging others to follow suit. These refined resolutions emphasize unity, alignment with business goals, and a comprehensive continent-wide approach to combating corruption while embracing the ever-evolving technology as a tool in hand. Binding goals to ensure that we contribute to Africa progressing at a global stage and moving forward like the power it is. The past is data that provides insight on impacting the future. The time is now to go forth and make change. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming, and we do hope whatever we've discussed today is going to bear fruits, not only for our generation, but for the generations to come. Thank you.
And now, I would like to call Professor on stage. He's smiling, to come and give us his exhortation speech in 10 minutes. Let's appreciate him as he comes on stage. 1, 2. Thank you very much.
Very good afternoon to everyone. I know you have worked really hard, and it is a clear indication that what happened today has got to you, and that's why you are staying until the last minute. I want to really thank my dear friend Fatuma Alwe for bringing us together, for thinking about a subject that we have to live with in order for us to make this continent the hope of the future. Because potential third world war is here. It can happen in Europe. It can also happen in Southeast Asia. It can also happen in the Middle East. And this continent that I call the largest island left will become a safe place for people to come. So we have to prepare it for the rest of the world, my friend. I have two very close colleagues that I work with very closely. Professor Olubai is sitting there. He's helping to build the best universities in Africa. He started in Nigeria. Mike Eldon has devoted all his life working and creating governance and the best system that we can create in order to govern ourselves. Michael, you want to wave? Yes. This man was from Romania, born in Palestine, lived in England, moved and became a Kenyan citizen. So he covered the rest. And so I'm very, very pleased to sort of summarize my speech because I had planned a longer speech. And it is going to be more of a challenge or a charge to you based on what we have done. In 1988, a group of us from the Graduate School of International Study, University of Denver, Colorado, where I studied, and a group of faculty from that university decided to travel to Singapore to meet my mentor, Lee Kuan Yew. And we had an hour discussion with Lee Kuan Yew, and in my group was Condoleezza Rice, who was my classmate, and all other people that came together. There were 5 Africans in that group. And that single visit to Singapore and an audience with Lee Kuan Yew changed our life forever. All of us, the 5, are very, very actively involved with the issues affecting Africa or affecting the world. Our colleague is the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Egypt. One of them is very senior in United Nations. And we are all, together with Condoleezza Rice, linked together. In the time that we spent with Lee Kuan Yew, it was a very tense discussion. And then it became very animated because I was raising a lot of questions. And he'll point at me and he'll say, "Young man, where are you from?" And I say, "I am American citizen, but I'm originally from Kenya. I'm a Kenyan citizen." And he say, "Yes, I thought you were from Kenya." And he said, don't waste time in America. Go back to Kenya and help change your country. Because Kenya, we were proud of Jomo Kenyatta and the 4 leaders of Africa. But they're all taking off on a bit, different tracks. So your country will become like Malaysia, that kicked Singapore off. Singapore was kicked out of Malaysia in 1986 because Singapore was a desolate, full of criminals. Every kind of criminals you can think about was Singapore. That's why Malaysia got tired and kicked them out. He didn't know what to do because they had nothing. And a letter that he wrote in 10th August 1965, he said it with us. So I still have a copy up to now. It was typed on the old typewriter. There's a lot of errors and corrections on it, but he handed this letter off to us. That one single visit changed my mind. And I was very clear I must return to Africa to be part of the movement that will make a difference. Lee Kuan Yew says Singapore kicked us out as members of Malaysian country. On August 10, 1965, I felt like death and tears and sweat on my heart. He made a commitment to his people at that time that out of poverty and misery, they will work together with one single thing, mindset, to change their country and make it a better country. So I want to begin with Lee Kuan Yew, and I want to end with Lee Kuan Yew, because he had significant impact on me and my life. They set out with 2 laws that they set. The Prevention of Corruption Act, PCA, the Corruption, Drug Trafficking, and other serious crime. And so we're talking, and this morning we heard the word talk and do. But Lou did more than that. He not only talked, they did it, and they committed, and it became a lifestyle. Dr. Ruel Kosa, in his seminal book, Attuned Leadership, Ethics form the capstone of pyramid of any organization and make contribution to society, where one is referring to government, enterprise, activist, church, or neighboring association. Dr. Konsa concludes that there is no true leadership without service to community, and there is no interest greater than the common interest. Like Dr. Konsa, Nelson Mandela left us with something to think about. He made a powerful thought that he passed on to us. In real life, we deal not only with gods, but with ordinary human like yourself, men and women who are full of contradiction, who are stable and fickle, strong and weak, famous and infamous, people in whose bloodstream the muckworm of bottles with potent pesticide. On which aspect one concentrates on in judging others will depend on the characters of particular judge. As we conclude our session today, Let's think and reflect on the turbulent business environment, which is not created by itself, but is created by us. And so there is a relationship, a strong relationship between the public sector and the business sector. Let me first raise the first question. What lesson can we learn from other stories that we have heard today and that we read about? In the words of Mark Stubborn, headlines regularly inform us of the public downfall. Everywhere, every country, and every time. We have seen idols fall from grace in a spectacular way. Just as the name of Donald Trump, Katuma Aidani, Tiger Woods, Mike Tyson, Jacob Zuma, and one by one, it is connected with the word corruption. In Zimbabwe, ex-president, finance minister, and a whole host of people. In Namibia, they made a deal with the Icelandic fishing company for millions of dollars. At this time, Namibia is planning to kill elephant to feed its people because there's no food. As you can see, these cases span and develop corporate world, public world, multinational NGO, sports, cultural icon, corruption and ethical violation, in neither geographical boundary, no cultural identity. All these people, many were respected at one point. So what happened? I would challenge you to read more about each of these cases. I have referred above, beyond the headline, accusation, counter-accusation. They're lifelong lesson for each one of us. Question number 2. Why do business leaders and others lose their way? We've had all kinds of explanation today. Failure to resist temptation. Why do people known for integrity engage in ethical activities? More important question is, how are we prepared? How are we preparing the young business leaders to avoid seduction of the moment? Mike Eldon Olubai can give you stories after stories of the serious challenge we face in order to invest at the university where I said. We resisted them, every single one of them, and stopped. I can just very briefly, when I came from America, one of the senior members in the president's office, who now transitioned to become a governor, asked me, Prof, don't just become a vice chancellor. Become a unique and a new vice chancellor. Create something that will help our government, devolve government, so that they can do something different from the central government. Because we're devolving corruption to the county government. And we're devolving dead wood from the central government to run the country. That touches me. So together with my people, Mike Eldon Olubai, who are both on my council, We created the most effective programming to help the county. And we organized a team. So I gave information to all the counties that you are all coming back to classroom. Doesn't matter how old you are. So there were former mayors, they're calling themselves your worship. Some of them have received all kind of accolade in Kenya. Some are calling themselves doctors. Some are even going as far as calling themselves professors. They never went beyond baccalaureate degree. Or some never went to school at all. But they went ahead and got certificate, I don't know where. So I told them, forget all that. I'm taking you back to classroom. And all I need is for you to have on your backpack books and be in the class. And we selected the best kind of people to assist them. And I said, I'll be checking every day. And I put a very tough lady that makes sure they're in class on time and they also leave on time. 4 days after that, this lady called me that the mayor is not coming to class. And I said, what's the matter? Call him, let's meet. So we met with the mayor. I said, what's the matter? And he said, these people speak English. I cannot, so I need tutor. I need someone to help me. So we gave the mayor a tutor, very good one. Before we did that, I said, you have to pay the cost of the instructor. He reaches out in his pocket, took out a lot of money, and put on the table. And I said, what's that for? It's for Emily and the tutor. And I said, no, give it back. We will send you the cost. He did that twice. And twice, he put the money on the table. Later on, I understand what he wanted was certificate, because he cannot run for parliament unless he has a baccalaureate, bachelor degree. So he wanted to buy it. Basically, you sign off, and I moved. We left. The funny thing is, Emily went back to the university and said this vice chancellor is either a very rich man or he doesn't like money. But he said, why can't he just give us? Because I have children to feed. We never taken that back. Question number 3. What is the consequences of failure to deal with pressure at the top? And this is very important. I want you to really listen. In the words of former Novartis chairman, Daniel Vasher, for many of us, the idea of being successful manager, leading a company from peak to peak, delivering the goods from quarter to quarter, is intoxication. You become big and you forget who you are. It is a pattern of celebration leading to belief that I'm the one they're celebrating. When you achieve good goal result, you are typically celebrated. You begin to believe that I can do it all. And you forget that you're working with the people and for the people. This sort of mindset destroys companies' reputation. We have seen this in the case of Enron, WorldCom, Levi Groups, Lehman Brothers, and so on and so on. Arrogance, hubris, greed, power, money, and control of personal cult. It destroys the good name and the institution. Question 4. What lead to corruption and the state of capture? You have all heard that. And I want to do this because there is an example that I want you to understand. Michelle Wong, the author of the book, it is our turn to eat. That's about Kenya. Argue very strongly against the notion that a leader can escape the blame of corruption and ethical behavior of his family, close friends, or supporter who do such deed and in his name. Michelle referred to a challenge of a corruption in the time of President Kibaki of Kenya. Powerfully put by Larry Shin and Jim Hart, leaders cast a huge shadow over the organization they lead. This is the reality, as the saying goes, fish rot from the head, which means a leader has to define ethical stance of his or her organization. The case of former President Richard Nixon of United States clearly indicated this. It revealed in a historical interview that Richard Nixon conducted with the famous journalist called David Frost, and you can go back and look at it. David Frost said, "Mr. President, so in a sense you were saying is that there are certain situations where president can decide that is the best interest of the nation or something and do something illegal." This is David Frost asking Richard Nixon. Now listen to the answer from Richard Nixon. Well, when the president does it, that means it is not illegal. You all hear it? And how many times you hear it in Africa? Because the president did it without the benefit of good grounding in ethics, values, principle, compliance, and the importance of doing things with the highest level of integrity. How do we expect our potential leaders to emerge unscathed from this corruption jungle? Last question. How can one stay on track? Most people can remain grounded by themselves for a while, but success, fame, power, prestige, and sometimes newfound friends change this all. Maintain first equilibrium amidst stress, discipline. Some people practice meditation or yoga or stress relief of any kind when they're faced with this kind of situation. Have courage to stand firm on your personal values and belief. John Githongo, who was the head of Kenya Anti-Corruption during President Kibaki, resigned his job and fled to the UK. Michelle Wong documents this in her book, which you can read. I want to conclude with a statement and a quote from Lee Kuan Yew. First, the statement. This conversation we have had today is about your role and about you. Your responsibility to live and lead ethically, regardless of where you come from. As we progress our conversation today, I urge you to resist the temptation to look at them, but reflect on yourself. and your organization. Our focus today must be ethical living and living the way of life, regardless which organization that you are in. This is from Lee Kuan Yew, and very powerful. This one, you need to go back and really read it. In the word of Lee Kuan Yew, in his famous book, From Third World to First World, he said, as a Prime Minister of Singapore, I had two options. First, to either get corrupted and be put in the Forbes magazine of the world's richest people, or serve my people and my country, and let that be the best, let my country be on the list of the 10 highest economy of the world. He chose the latter, achieved his life dream, and today, Singapore is a model for all of us. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have come to the end of the program, and as we conclude, I will be calling our convener, Fatma, to come on stage to give a vote of thanks and some certificates for a competition that the young men and women went through.
Wow. Do you feel energized? Yes. And tired at the same time? Yes. A little bit, isn't it? It's actually been a day, and I am so happy because we have maintained time, despite having taken time. It sounds like a riddle, doesn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, we actually started an hour and a half later because of a little bit of a challenge in the morning. So we've managed. It's just that we carried forward. Before I say thank you, allow me to, there were two competitions that we looked at. One was by the youth. You know, they had a writing competition, and they gave essays. And in fact, I am hoping we would be able to give them out, the essays that were written. We had about 15 entries, and we were supposed to choose 3. There was a tie because they were being assessed by lecturers at different universities. So there was a little bit of a tie, and for that, we figured instead of saying 1, 2, 3, we will give all the 5 because there was a tie, I think, with one of them or 2 of them. Hence, we will give 5. The only thing is I will call upon them. They come to the stage, we take a photograph. We'll not be able to give the certificates at this point in time. We will email or give them the certificates simply because the Youth Ambassador Network was actually started by the United Nations ODC, and Francesco had to run somewhere, so we felt they may have missed out a little bit. I will call upon them. We do take a photograph. If it is okay, Prof and Soji, I don't know how fast you guys can come to the stage, then we can take a photograph of them. I want to see how young you are. Okay, so allow me to call upon Vivian Kabiru. Beatrice Nguris. Beatrice, where are you? Maureen Njeri. Now, this one is very British. Earl Odhiambo. Follow protocol, isn't it? And Donatos Mwenda. Thank you. So what we are going to do is we will deliver the certificates, but let's take a photograph here. And congratulations, really. Congratulations. Okay. And their president, of course.
Realize we all care about things that don't really matter. We're just told it does, and now we're all trying to keep our heads above the water. But what if we don't wanna? If there's something you wanna do, just do it. Don't let your head stop your heart from moving. If there's someone you wanna talk to them. Who knows who we be if
We also had another competition, trust in business. And remember, we said that if there's no trust, how do your stakeholders actually believe in you? And this is something that Takaful spoke about. And this is something that we do want businesses to inculcate, because it's halfway to ethics. People need to trust you. The different stakeholders need to trust your word. They need to trust what you are saying. Now, there is no kichini-chini here, but the winners are, we have Britam Holdings. Okay. Then we have Safaricom. And there's no kichini-chini here. And we also have Avenue Healthcare. So in the interest of time, actually, that's the reason why we are really not calling one-on-one, simply because we feel that we have kept you enough. And you know, when somebody you've eaten, you've laughed, you've finished all the stories, and at the end of the day, you feel you want to go. So now let me give the formal vote of thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the close of this year's Africa Business Ethics Conference. It's my profound honor to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of the organizing team. I may be standing here, but I'm not the person who did it. And I'd like to appreciate, first and foremost, all the colleagues who helped walk on this journey. We fought, we cried, we ate a lot of sweets, we did all sorts of things you can imagine. So can I have the team, the EBEC team, please, if you could just stand up and we clap for you? And this one is normal claps, not Joe's claps. Please, 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 the team. I can see Job is already standing and Kate is there. Okay. Asanteni sana, we look forward to next year. Okay, thank you. So I extend my deepest gratitude to our distinguished keynote speakers, panelists, moderators, presenters who shared invaluable insights. Your expertise and commitment have inspired us all. See, it was inspirational, isn't it? Great. It inspired us to champion ethical practices and integrity in our business environments. To our esteemed sponsors, allow me to start with Kenya Airways because I'm wearing their, okay? United Nations Global Compact Kenya, Center for International Private Enterprise, UN Office on Drugs and Crime, Safaricom, Takaful Insurance, Institute of Human Resource Management, Wezesha Biashara Network, and of course, Milestones. To our endorsing partners, Federation of Kenya Employers, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, KEPSA Foundation, Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the ambassadors, the Ethics Ambassadors Network. Thank you. Having said that, this would not have been possible without you. Otherwise, we would have been talking to an empty room, isn't it? So thank you, Federation of Uganda Employers, Shafi, Confederation of Tanzania Industries, Collective Value Creation, that my sister Siamo there from Botswana, And of course, the gentleman that I always quote, if he were to charge me, man, this gentleman would be a millionaire by now. Convention of Business Integrity, Nigeria, this is Mr. Integrity Soji Apampa. Your unwavering support and dedication to this important cause, your partnership was instrumental in really making ABEC a reality. A heartfelt thank you, and I once again thank you, private leaders, private sector leaders, SMEs, youth champions, youth champions, and the advocacy groups. Active engagement, thought-provoking discussions, contributions in the plenary. And the funny thing is, I have to say this, everybody, when I was walking around to see the panels, told me that their panel was the best. So I was wondering, who really? I went to compliance, they were the best. I went to youth, they said, Mama, why didn't you come? We were the best. You know? So everybody gave all that they had. Research, AI, everybody. Again, this would not have been possible. There's a group of people that was here by 6 o'clock this morning, and I want to thank Bonnie and your team, BTV. I want to thank you, Lawyers Hub, the media present, and the Kempinski. We recognize the exceptional efforts that ABEC Organizing Committee, planning, have brought life to this event, allowing us to discuss, collaborate, and reimagine. Really, we need to reimagine the future of business ethics, but above all, the future of Africa. Where do we want to leave this continent? Do we want to leave it better than what we got? Or do you want to make sure you plunder everything? And remember what I said this morning, when you go to your creator, you take everything with you and you leave nothing for the rest. Finally, I thank each one of you for your time, commitment, and belief in the transformative power of ethical business practices. As we leave today, may we carry forward the lessons learned, and I have to remember what Prof said. He said 3 questions he gave us, and take actionable steps to promote transparency, accountability, and sustainability in our respective spheres of influence. And they say that we may all talk until is it the cows or the chickens come to roost? The chicken, eh? We may all talk until the chickens come to roost, but at the end of the day, it is you and your action and what you want to do. As an African proverb says, there is no beauty but the beauty of action. Thank you very much and go well. Asanteni.